Welcome back to America's Voice Live. Well, many questions still surround whether or not President Biden will rejoin the Iran nuclear deal. President Biden's administration dodged an Iranian offer to coordinate both countries' return to the Iran nuclear agreement. The administration argues that the Islamic Republic must first reinstate the restrictions that were suspended nearly 3 years ago. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was an agreement reached by the U.S. and Iran alongside China, France, Germany, Russia, and the United Kingdom. Former President Trump left the accord in 2018. I want to move on because last week a Belgian court sentenced an Iranian diplomat to 20 years in prison for plotting a bomb attack against the National Council of Resistance of Iran outside of Paris in 2018. To talk more about the legal victory, I want to bring in Alireza Jafarzadeh, the director of the Washington office for the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Alireza, welcome back. Tell us, this was a huge win for the people of the MEK and the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Tell us what this means to your organization.
Well, thank you so much, Tudor. It certainly means a lot. It's a big victory, not just for us, but for everywhere in the world, those who have been victims of the Iran regime's terrorism and those who wanted to see a free Iran. This is a very significant the court ruling in Europe by Belgium, because after 40 years of the Iran regime's terrorism, the regime always denied its involvement and was always finding a way of getting away with murder and terror and killings. This time, their diplomat was caught with terrorism and it was convicted, sentenced to 20 years of imprisonment. And most importantly, the court found that this was a part of the operation by the Ministry of Intelligence with the help of the diplomatic centers of the regime, meaning the embassy. And it's very clear that this operation could not have happened, this terror plot could not have happened without the full cooperation and consent and facilitation of the regime's foreign ministry, specifically Javad Zarif. And it's important to note that it was a diplomatic pouch that was used to bring the bomb. The judges said that the bomb was built in Iran, it was tested in Iran, and then it was transported to Europe using diplomatic pouch. Just think about it. This is not what diplomatic pouches are for. And then the regime foreign minister was trying to use the what they call diplomatic immunity to escape the conviction, but that didn't hold. And now is the time, really, now that the courts have done their job, now is the time for the policy side of it, for Europe to stand firm and hold the regime accountable. There has to be some punishments for what the regime has done, but also for the United States and other countries to look at this as a clear case of a state-sponsored terrorism by the Iran regime that doesn't belong to 40 years ago or 30 years ago. It's about right now with the full cooperation and consent of Javad Zarif, the top diplomat of the Iranian regime.
And this was a willingness to bomb your annual summit, which has diplomats from around the world. That's why you're saying that this is a worldwide issue. This is something that the Iranian regime obviously understood, they knew about. They potentially sent this man there. He was willing to bomb this building where you had people from around the world really there. Let me ask you, what do you think that the people of Europe think when they see that the Iranian regime was willing to take out some of their top diplomats?
I think both the European nations and the United States, anywhere else, when they look at this case, I mean, if you're willing, if this is a regime that is taking a very high explosive bomb that could damage, inflict high casualty, this is the kind of explosive that was used in the bombing of the Brussels airport, very professionally made, and as the judges said, meant to inflict heavy casualty, heavy killing on the population. When you have this situation, and you mentioned in that event there were dozens and dozens of American dignitaries, former officials from both the Democrats and Republicans, many European members of parliament, sitting members of parliament from UK to almost all of the European nations, representatives from Middle Eastern countries, and hundreds of other American citizens who had gone there with their family members. All of them could have been the subject to this terror attack, although the main target was the Iran resistance leader, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, but everybody else could have been impacted. That's why Europe really has the opportunity now to once and for all put an end to the Iran regime's terrorism. And this wasn't the only case that the regime has been involved in terrorism in Europe. Just in the past 2.5 years, 7 Iranian regime diplomats, in addition to Assadi, who was sentenced to 20 years of imprisonment, 7 other diplomats have been expelled by European nations for involvement in terror plots. 4 of them by Albania, including the regime's ambassador to Albania, who wanted to bomb a similar event that was held in Albania in March of 2018. You know, your channel has been to some of those events. And 2 other diplomats by Netherlands, another one by France. That's why this is so important, and really what Europe needs to do, they need to designate both the Revolutionary Guards and the Ministry of Intelligence as terrorist entities. They need to decrease their diplomatic relations with the Iranian regime, all their ambassadors from Iran.
We're running up against a break, but thank you so much. This truly, as you said, is a victory, a worldwide victory. We appreciate having Alireza Jafarzadeh here. He is the director of the Washington office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Stay tuned. We'll be back after this break.